Podcast Answer Man, episode number 141. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Podcast Answer Man. My name is Cliff Ravenscraft. Want to welcome you back to the Podcast Answer Man. I took a week off last week and enjoyed some time with my family over Christmas break. And now I'm back in the saddle. And of course, for those of you who are not aware, of course, this podcast is all about podcasting. That's all we're going to talk about is podcasting. And I want to just do something a little bit different here right up front. And I want to do something that I basically coach all of my consulting clients to do in their shows. And I'm realizing, and I tell them, I say, listen, I'm going to teach you a lot of things as I coach you in the best practices for podcasting. Understand this, that I don't always carry out everything myself when I should. And there are a lot of things that I should be doing in my own podcasting that I don't do. But, it's a situation of where I say, listen, if you really want to be effective in podcasting, do as I say, not always as I do. So one of the things I want to change right up front is that, number one, you start out with, mentioning the name of your podcast. You should always start out with what your name is. You should always introduce yourself. You should mention what your podcast is about so that people who come along for the very first time, they understand what the podcast is about. Hopefully the name of your podcast indicates that. And then another great thing to do at the top of every episode, within the first minute of your podcast, at least within the first 3 or 4 minutes of your podcast, you should tell people what you're going to talk about in your show. So here's the thing, right up front, I'm going to let you know some of the things that we're going to cover in this episode. We're going to start off with a call that came in from Dave Dufour. He's going to ask a question, and we're going to discuss hosting your podcast. Should it be on your own hosting account with like GoDaddy, or should you join a network like Blueberry or Mevio, or, when do you make those decisions? Those kind of things. Eric Fisher called in, says that, he knows that I use Adobe Audition and I don't use Levelator. We're going to talk with that one. I'm going to talk a little bit about what Levelator is, what it does, and what I actually use if I need something like that. So I'm going to answer that question. It all has to do with evening out your audio levels. Brent Green's going to ask, what's the best way to engage your audience, to interact with them? So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. I mean, obviously, that could be like a whole 10-part series. Then Gordon called in, and he wants to know, or actually, his wasn't necessarily a question as much as it is just a statement, and he wants to get my thoughts on his statement of whether or not you can create the perfect podcast. And I think he may be surprised at my answer when he asked, or when he actually said the statement in his voicemail, what you'll hear, where quality or quantity beats quality every time. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to give you an example of a podcaster who has done what I think is something that we all as podcasters should do, and that is train your audience on the basics of podcasting. What is a podcast? And I'm going to give you the perfect example of that. Steve McQueen called in, and he is going to give us some reviews of some Android podcatching software. So for those of us who have an iPhone or iPod Touch or whatever, obviously we have iTunes, and we're going to talk about that. And then, yes, at the end, and I am actually leaving it right at the end, and I'm going to try not to do anything up front here, I am going to give you a little infomercial. So I'm going to tell you right now, I am going to be really heavily pushing a product and service that I am going to be launching here over the next 6 weeks, and it's Podcast Answer Man Boot Camp. And it's a 7-part webinar series, but I'm going to talk about that at the end of the episode. And so if any of this stuff sounds interesting then please do me a favor, stick around for the whole thing. If none of that sounds interesting to you, then just check out the next episode when it comes down the feed. All right, so with all of that out of the way, we've got tons of things to cover, and I'm going to attempt to cover it all within 1 hour. And I'm sure I'll be pushing it right up to the edge. So we're going to start things off with Dave Dufour, and here's what Dave had to say.
Hi, Cliff. This is Dave Dufour in Elkhart, Indiana, with a question for the podcast Answer Man. I'm hosting my podcast Creative License on GoDaddy right now, and I'm very happy with the service and the uptime and all that. As a web developer, I have a couple of hosting packages on GoDaddy, and so it's real handy for me to also keep my podcasts there. And I was wondering, however, as a podcast grows and as a podcast maybe gets more and more subscribers, does it make sense to have to actually be on a hosting with a hosting company that specializes in podcast hosting? I'm thinking of something like Blueberry or is it Mevio, something like that, where there's also some promotional benefits to being part of that kind of a network, et cetera. And I have to admit that I'm not completely clear on how a lot of those things exactly work. I'm kind of clear on what Blueberry is, but I'm not real sure about what Mevio, the former pod show, is all about exactly. But anyway, I'm just the big question for me is should I start out on traditional hosting? Does it make sense? Am I going to find that I'm in a too costly environment? I mean, GoDaddy's pretty cheap, and as far as the servers are concerned, everything seems great. So, and I'm happy with it. But I just wanted to know if you have any pitfalls, or are there any snakes in the road down the road? Thanks a lot for all your help, Cliff. You do a great job. I've been a fan for over a year now, and I learned something from every show.
Well, Dave, thank you very much for all of the questions you have there. And I just realized, as somebody was telling me in the chat room here, that it says there's no audio on my thing, and I'm not sure why it does that. Okay. Anyway, sorry about that. Dave, great question. And that is one of the pitfalls of the live show. Sometimes you get a little distracted as you're recording a live show. But anyway, moving right along, I want to let you know there are some, that is a great question, and the answer that I would give is this. Number one, I definitely prefer hosting my podcast on my own hosting account. So that means I definitely do not want to rely on a third-party vendor to be the web presence for my podcast. Now, understand this, that I'm coming from the position of I see my podcast and my blog and my website, I see it all as my personal brand, whether it be for a business or just my own personal passion. I see everything about this as being a part of my quote-unquote personal brand. This is my home on the internet. This is the place I call home, and I want to have as much control over it as possible. So I don't want to go to like WordPress.com and have all kinds of limitations on some of the customization factors that I could get into if I had my own hosting account. I could do whatever I want. I could change WordPress however I want. I don't want to go to Blogger, and I don't want to go to Mevio or Blueberry or any of the other services out there to have them be the home for my podcast. My own preference is to go to a service like GoDaddy or Bluehost. Those are my two favorite places to go. There's a lot of places you can go for hosting. It shouldn't cost you any more than like $87 a year. It should definitely cost you never over $100 a year for web hosting. You should get a Linux account, and for $100 a year, you get a Linux account, and you could probably install at least 25 different WordPress installations if you wanted to. Really, technically, you only need one for your blog and podcast, or multiple podcasts. I have 24 different podcasts running on one website, so one WordPress installation. So you can do a lot there. But anyway, I prefer having it all hosted on my own account. And that way, again, I can control everything. Now, as far as, hosting you said, what about if your podcast grows, it becomes popular? Well, when I started podcasting in December of 2005, I told my wife about the fact that we were going to do a podcast, and, I was all excited, and, we all kind of thought, we'd be lucky if we could get 40 people to listen to us, right? 40 people would be great to listen to us. And we were shocked to learn that through some of the networking and some of the promotion that we did, that our podcast grew to several thousand subscribers within just a few short weeks. And then all of a sudden we learned, like, wow, we've got a real problem here. And let me explain to you the problem. I was hosting on a company, I do remember. The company's name was ReadySetConnect.com. ReadySetConnect.com. This is back in 2005. And I hosted it. I hosted my podcast on my own blog, and I was uploading the MP3 files to my own hosting account server. Now, this is back before podcasting and all this big, huge social media stuff got huge. So back then, when you bought a hosting account, you had, like, for bandwidth limitations, you were allowed 100 megs of bandwidth per month, which was no big deal because all we had was blogs with text, right, and a couple pictures. So it was no big deal. But I started hosting my podcast on my site. And I remember uploading the third episode of the Weekly Loss podcast. And when I uploaded the third podcast episode, which, by the way, the first 3 episodes were all right around 65, 75 megabytes each. So that's all I uploaded was 3 episodes. And when I uploaded the third episode, everything was going great for about an hour. But about 2 to 3 hours after I uploaded that episode, I started to get my email inbox flooded. And what happened was everybody's like, Cliff, what in the world has happened to your podcast site? Where's your podcast? Why is your website not working? So I go to my website, and do you know what it says? It doesn't show my blog anymore. It says, account suspended. Please contact billing department. Bandwidth limitation exceeded. And so what happened was, several thousand people went to go download that most recent episode, and not only that mention the most recent, the third one, but those thousands of people were downloading all 3 episodes, and it just ate up the bandwidth in no time. Now today, if you go to Bluehost or you go to GoDaddy, you get all kinds of bandwidth with them. Sometimes you get like a terabyte, or some of them will say unlimited. Well, here's what I would caution you about these unlimited bandwidth plans when you're hosting your MP3s on. Call that company up and say, listen, I'm getting ready to create a podcast on your unlimited bandwidth plan. So you're telling me that I have unlimited bandwidth for $6 a month? And they'll say, well, yeah, you do. So if I uploaded MP3 files and and I said, what about if I have, let's just say, what if I deliver 100,000 downloads? What if I deliver 100,000 downloads over the course of, let's say, a 60-day period of time, and those downloads are all, I don't know, somewhere between 50 and 100 megabytes each. This is what they will tell you. The bandwidth is unlimited, but we do limit you on CPU cycles. And they said every computer has this count of CPU cycles, and there is a limited amount over that. And if you ever go above that limit, I don't know what it is, if it's 10,000 or whatever they are, but they have a limit on there. And any CPU cycle, any call on the server to produce anything over that amount, you will be billed for each CPU cycle over. So when it says it's unlimited, no, it's not unlimited with these unlimited hosting plans. So here's what I do. I prefer having my own hosting account for my blog, which, by the way, a shared hosting account will never be a problem. I can't ever foresee a problem. I've got hundreds of people on a forum that I run. I've got thousands of hits on my site every day. Never have I experienced a problem with quote-unquote bandwidth issues on my hosting account. Now, I've had issues with GoDaddy and their servers crashing from time to time, but never because I was on a shared hosting account was that the issue. Because all of my quote-unquote heavy lifting is my MP3 files. It doesn't cost me very much bandwidth or CPU cycle space for people to hit an RSS feed, which, by the way, the RSS feed coming off my website is only, usually just a couple hits a day, as FeedBurner grabs the original feed off of my site, and then literally the thousands of hits. We get about 50 to 60,000 downloads a week here at gspn.tv. Those all those RSS inquiries, most of them come off of the GoDaddy.com, or I'm sorry, come off the FeedBurner servers, which is free. So there's really very little bandwidth that's being used by my hosting account at all. But my MP3 files, we're actually going through a couple terabytes per month of bandwidth there. Now, how much does that cost me? I use a service called Libsyn, Libsyn. It stands for Liberated Syndication. I have 3 accounts with them. I max all 3 of my accounts out because I'm putting out about 15 episodes a week. Well, somewhere between 7 to 15 episodes a week of podcast content, depending on when I'm doing it. But anyway, we're putting up a lot of content, and bandwidth with Libsyn really is unlimited. Now, Libsyn costs I think the cheapest plan that they have is $6 a month, and you can get, I think, 100 megs of space on their high-speed servers. I'm not going to go into Libsyn and how it works right now, but just to know that it works. And when you pay for the space and you figure out how it all works, there is no limit to the bandwidth that you have on a monthly basis. How many downloads I could have if I had 3 million subscribers. I would not pay any more for bandwidth than what I have right now with 60,000. So we're completely fine. And by the way, 60,000 isn't how many people are listening to Podcast Answer Man. It's the 24 podcasts in total that I do. Now, you said about, Podango and Blueberry and these networks. That'd be a great question for another time. But let me just say that, Podango tried to get me to sign up with them a while back, as did, Mevio back when it was Podshow. And I almost signed on with Podango, but one of the things that they would have required for my promotion and everything, I would have had to, quote unquote, have a home on the web for my podcast on the Podango servers. And so it would actually be, I could still have my own, but anything that they promote is going to be promoted on their site so that it could cross-promote all the other stuff. It makes perfect sense. Well, the thing is, though, is Podango today is non-existent. They went bankrupt. They're gone. Kaput. Bye-bye. And if you haven't heard it in the past, Podango gave people like 1 week notice to get all their content off the servers. Otherwise, it was going to be deleted permanently. And this happened. It happened a year ago today. It was right between Christmas and New Year's. I think it was on the 26th of December, and they said, you've got until the 1st to get all your stuff off of our servers because we can't guarantee you that we're going to have any web presence at all come January 1st. And it's like, and so there's all kinds of personal issues that I see with not being in control of my own content. Now, with that being said, I want to say that I love the guys over at Blueberry. And Callie Lewis will tell you that she loves Mevio. I mean, she's done well by Mevio. There's a lot of benefits to being a part of a network, but there's a lot of benefits to being in control of all your own content as well. I think it'd be fun. I think I'm going to see if I can get maybe Todd to come on and talk to us about Blueberry one day. So Todd, if you're out there listening, let's get in touch, and I'd like to invite you on to Podcast Answer Man. So Dave, I hope that answers your question. My suggestion is this. Number 1, go ahead. If you're starting out and it's just a hobby, you can certainly host those MP3 files on your own GoDaddy account. The problem is if you get into like 55 episodes and then all of a sudden something happens, let's just say you get 55 episodes and then Oprah says, dude, I so want to promote you on my TV show. Of course, I don't know if Oprah's still doing our TV show or not. But anyway, let's just say something like that happens. And then all of a sudden you're on Oprah and you got 3 million people go and download your site. Your site's going down, my friend. You're down. You're done. You're closed. Or, that's only if you're lucky. Like I was a blessed man when my account got suspended and they shut things down over at Ready, Set, Connect. I'm a blessed man because I remember back in 2005, other podcasters were not so lucky. They were doing the same thing I did, hosted their content, and boom, all of a sudden they got some major exposure. Thousands and thousands of people downloaded their content, and guess what? Did their ISP shut down their service? No, they charged them overage. I do have personal friends that I know back in 2005, they received bills from their hosting account for $4,000 and $5,000 for bandwidth overages. And that's what launched, Libsyn. That's why Libsyn came into play. So anyway, I hope that answers your question. And if you want more information on that, let's call in some additional questions and we'll go there. Let's move on to Eric Fisher's next question here. And this is what Eric had to say. So take it away, Eric.
Hey, Cliff, it's Eric Fisher. And I know that you do something differently than using the Levelator tool that you do with Adobe Audition. And I know you've talked about this in the past, at least briefly, and I cannot seem to find where it is through the GSPN forums or just going through the back archives of Podcast Answer Man. And I thought at some point it'd be great if you could revisit that and just kind of walk us through what you're doing and why with that, so that we can maybe find a comparable setup for that to maybe not use Levelator if we don't have to. I know it's a quick, easy drag and drop tool, which was going to work good for some people, and it has done well for me, but I'm curious to see if it might be possible for me to move forward and use something that might be similar to what you're doing in Adobe Audition. Thank you very much.
Very cool. Eric, thank you very much for that call. And Levelator, by the way, it was a huge thing that saved so many of us back in the days. And it can be something that will save you today as a brand new podcaster or fairly new podcaster if you're not getting your audio recording levels right the first time. So basically, Levelator is where, let's just say you do a podcast. Let's just say it's you and two other people, and one of you talks really loud, the other person talks kind of in the middle, and somebody else in the show is really low. And you're looking at the waveform of the file when you're looking at it, and you want to try to even it out to where all of you are kind of at the same volume level, so you have some consistent audio levels through your podcast. Well, to do that manual, by the way, there are some things that I can do in Adobe Audition that does all of this in a very nice way. But back in the day, before we all knew about some of the advanced tools and some of the expensive tools that are available to do this, there was a free program created by, what's their names? Anyway, let me just look it up real quick. If I type in Levelator, I'll know immediately. They did a lot of things to help the Conversations Network. That's who put it together, the Conversations Network. Anyway, they did a great job creating this product called the Levelator, which is where it would actually, you drop a wave version of your file in, it would run a process and it would do something called normalizing, and also I think it did a little bit of hard limiting as well. And it would kind of just bring up some audio levels, bring down other audio levels, and try to make it a more consistent sound. It would do a little bit of automatic gain control. I think there's like 4 or 5 different things that it really tried to do in that process. And it really does help out a lot of people. Now, what do? I use Adobe Audition. And I use it now. First of all, I don't have to use any processing to do audio levels at all because of my process. I use a digital audio recorder, and I go straight from my mixer into my digital audio recorder. All of my different audio sources, such as Skype, telephones, all the different microphones, they all come into my mixers. All of them are on independent channels where I can change the sliders. And on the Edirol, I'm always looking to make sure that we're all hitting the same levels when everything is being recorded. So if the person, in chair number 2, if my co-host, if their audio is less than mine, I look to try to get it between -12 to -6 decibels on my meter that shows up on my recorder. If I show that they're -20 and I'm right at 6, I just crank them up. And if all of a sudden I bring in a live call via Skype or something like that, and they come in and they're really loud and they're peaking, I just look at that, and it just takes me a half a second to bring their slider down and match it right at 6. And so I'm good to go. And by the time I hit stop at the end, all of my audio levels are set right then and there. But let's just say I didn't have that. Well, then I will tell you that in Adobe Audition, there is hard limiting is available, as is normalization. The processes you could decide what you want to use there. I'm going to tell you what, I'm not going to go into my infomercial now, Eric, but there is a webinar that I'm going to be doing here very soon that I'll mention at the end of this show. So stick around for that. But just to let you know, in Adobe Audition, there is normalization and there is hard limiting. And those are two things that do a lot of what Levelator does. And for those of you who do not have Adobe Audition and you do have issues where some audio levels are higher and lower than others, then I encourage you to go do a search for Levelator, Levelator. You will find it. It is very easy to use, and it is a great product. So check it out. Let's move on to Brent Green. Brent is a client, and I did not ask him to give me all this wonderful praise for my services, but I'm always thankful to hear when somebody enjoys what I do for them. So here's Brent.
Hi, Cliff. This is Brent Green calling in from Kansas City, part of the Pursuing Meaningful Work podcast and the Leadership Equip Network. Thank you for helping us get things set up. We appreciate that. You helped us develop a podcast as well as get a marketing platform set up through different forms of social media. I'll ask you this on a consulting call that we'll have later today, but just wanted to shoot this to the line here as well in case you might want to talk about it in one of your podcasts. What's the best ways to engage your audience? You've got Facebook fan pages, and then you've got network set up. You got all different kinds of ways to do it. And we were looking for ways to better engage. We the people that we know well, we engage with them well, but the folks that are checking us out through iTunes and through our Facebook fan page, we want to get some more ideas on how to engage with them better. Thanks for what you do. We appreciate what you've done for us here at the Leadership Network, and thanks for helping us with setting up pursuingmeaningfulwork.com. Thanks very much.
Hey, Brent, thank you so much. I am so thankful to have you as well as all my other clients out there. And I'm so thankful also to hear your interest and your passion in engaging your audience. I think it's the most important thing about podcasting is the fact that this is not a one-way communication tool, that this is a place where we can have a two-way dialogue. And I know a lot of clients that I have that hire me, they have a hard time picking up and understanding how that is and how that works. They think that, I can just create content and people will listen, and that may be possible that you'll get that, but keeping people coming back for more, and also getting it to where people not only just enjoy your content, but they become passionate about the content that you do so much that they're talking about you and your content to all their friends who are passionate about the same things. Well, that takes a little bit more of audience engagement, if you will. Some ways to engage your audience. Number one, acknowledge them all the time. Number two, care about them a lot. Care about every single person that listens to your podcast. Now, at I guess 141 episodes now, how many times, if you have been listening for a while, how many times have you heard me say, listen, one of my biggest pet peeves is when somebody hires me and says, Cliff, I want you to help me to help increase the size of my audience. I've been podcasting for 3 months and I only have 50 listeners or subscribers. I only have 300 subscribers. I only have 1,000 subscribers after doing this for a year. And that phrase, I only have, really bothers me, because the question is, okay, you have 50 subscribers. Can you tell me 15 people's first name, last name, and another personal fact about those 15 people? Just 15 out of the 50. And if you can't tell me a first and last name and at least one other personal fact, then that tells me that you are not engaging in a relationship with your audience. How is it that I can get first and last name? By the way, I can give you the first and last name and at least one other personal fact. And when I say one other personal fact, I'm not talking about their email address. I'm talking about maybe what city they live in, what they do for a living, what their kids' names are, what their passions are, what they do as for hobbies. I can give you the first and last name and at least one other personal fact for 15,000 people in my community. Guaranteed. I could give you a list of 15,000 people. I can give you their first name, last name, and a minimum of one other personal fact. And it's very simple. First of all, if I go to gspn.tv/forum, I have 747 people that are registered in the last 2 years on that one. And I had about 3,000 people on the forum that all went bad back in the old days when I used to use PHP board. Bulletin board. But anyway, I've got 747 people. I have their first and last name and also all kinds of information that they've shared about themselves. I've got, I think my daughter just looked, we've had 4,700 voicemails that usually start out with, "Hi, Cliff, this is so-and-so from Rochester, New York," or "This is so-and-so from Southern California." This is, I know because these people are calling in. So personally knowing these people and getting and caring about it, not just having the information, but what do you do with the information? Do you care? When somebody says, "Hey, I listened to your content and it's been really encouraging for me. I lost my job 7 months ago and you've really inspired me to think about XYZ." The question is, what do you do with that? Do you respond and just forget about it? Or do you set up a follow-up in 3 months from now and say, "Hey, 3 months ago, you wrote me an email and said this, and you said you were inspired and you were going to try to do this. Have you done that? How's that going for you?" These are the kinds of things that I'm doing. When somebody shares a personal insight or information with me, I have a system set up to where now I can track that information, and I set myself a follow-up for, 3 months down the road just to check in with that person. And chances are, usually by engaging with them and communicating with them through various different means, I follow up as the time goes along. Matter of fact, let me just give you some ways to engage, so you understand the importance of engaging and what that might look like. So let me give you some ways. Number one, the first thing I ever did was I plastered my email address everywhere. Today, it's feedback@gspn.tv. It's the easy thing. Any podcast, anything you want to say, any feedback, email me, feedback@gspn.tv. You'll get a response, usually within 24 hours. Depending these days, it could take as much as 3 or 4 days at times. Praying that's all going to take care of itself. I'm getting ready to hire a virtual assistant actually on Monday. So I'm excited about that, and I'm hopefully going to get some of my processes in place to where I'm able to continue to be effective in the engagement of my community and building these relationships and taking them to a deeper level. But I answer every email. I answer every single email. Now, is there going to come a day when 6,000 emails come in? Yeah, that might be possible. And if it does, well, then I'll probably try to find some way to make something make sense to where I'm not just ignoring emails. I never want to say things like somebody who I admire very much. I never want to say to my community, "I don't check email. I don't read email." I never want to say that. I want to say, you know what, if it ever gets to the point where, I'm getting 1,000 emails every day, I never want to just ignore it. I want to develop processes and put workflows into place where there is at least some level of connection, some level of engagement. And if I can't connect to them personally, let me connect my community to other people in the community. Let me give you a perfect example of this. I created gspn.tv/forum. It's a whole nother conversation that I encourage you to call in and ask, when do I start a forum? Or do I just rely on the comment section of the blog? Because trust me, if you're a brand new podcaster, do me a favor, don't go start a ghost town. Okay, that's all I'll say about it right now. Don't go start a ghost town. Wait till you can create a community online before you go launching your own forum. Again, you want more elaboration on that, give me a call, 859-795-4067. 859-795-4067 is the voicemail hotline. Open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you can call in that question. We'll elaborate further on when to start a forum. But anyway, but I created a forum because we had the Weekly Lost podcast. I was getting about 85 emails a week due to the Lost podcast itself. That's one of 24 shows that I produce. And let me tell you, these emails weren't, hey, Cliff, I really enjoyed the show. I totally agree with you. Or, hey, Cliff, I had a thought. I totally disagree. Did you remember this? It wasn't one-line things. I had about 80 emails, 80 to 90, sometimes as much as 100 emails in a single week devoted to every single episode of the TV show Lost. And these emails, I'm not kidding you, these emails were sometimes as short as 3 paragraphs long. And if I printed them out, I had some that would take up about 3 pages of printer paper. Now, can I read all those and respond to them? No way. So what did I do? Did I ignore them all? Sure. I just archived them, moved on. No, I didn't do that. I created a section in the forum called the Weekly Lost Podcast, or the all Lost Talk section of our forum. If you go to gspn.tv/forum, you'll see it there. And what I did is I would actually take the entire email, I would copy it, and I would paste it as a post in the forum. And I would respond to that person saying, hey, thank you so much for taking the time to write this out. My goodness, what an amazing amount of energy you put into this. And it means a lot to me that you did that. Please understand, I can't read every single email that comes in, in our show. In fact, I'm horrible at reading when I'm doing a podcast. So if you wanted to call in and leave a voicemail on our voicemail hotline, I'll guarantee you I'll eventually get you into one of our episodes. But what I've done is I went ahead and pasted your forum and by your email in the forum, and I've went ahead and here's a link to it. And so if you click here, it'll take you to the forum. And guess what? Not only will just one person benefit from hearing this or reading this, but there's going to be a conversation around it. I encourage you to sign up for the forum and participate in a conversation around your theory. I think you're going to find a lot of other like-minded people who are just as passionate about the TV show as Lost as we are. And that's what I did. I created a process to where, okay, every email that comes in that is too long for me to personally respond to, I when it was not personal in nature, I never do that on anything personal. But if it's just like a theory about a TV show, then that's what I was doing. I was like, or sometimes I would even say, a part of the procedure is, do you mind if I post this in the forum and get permission? So kind of think through those things as well. So answer every email. You just heard me say the second one. Create a voicemail feedback hotline. 859-795-4067. Open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can always listen. I've got thousands and thousands of voicemails that I've received in the last 4 years. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 just in this show, and I've got another 30 to 40 that are waiting in queue for future episodes of Podcast Answer Man. So create a voicemail hotline for you to take in the listener calls. And by the way, when a caller calls in and hears their own voice, there's a good chance that they'll do what I did the very first time I heard my voice in a podcast. I went and said, oh my gosh, they played my call and they responded to me personally. They said my name and I went and played it like for 5 other people. And so there's a chance that even something like that's going to happen. But anyway, engage with them by answering every email, or at least put processes into place to connect them with each other, connect your audience to each other. Take their voice feedback, play their voice feedback in your show. Create a live meetup, invite people to come hang out with you sometime. Get this, on February 2nd, we're watching a TV show. It is going to be the season premiere of the last season of Lost. And we have somebody coming from Belgium. There's a possibility that somebody said they might try to come from Germany. We've got some people who mentioned that they might come from the UK. We have people coming from all over the United States just to hang out and watch TV together, the TV show Lost. I'm not kidding you. We've had 2 of these in the past, or actually we've had 3 meetups in the past where we've had people come from all over, several states. And they come just to hang out and be a part of this community. So you talk about engagement, that's a great way to engage with them too. Some face-to-face time. When you go somewhere, let people know that you're heading to a city or a town and say, hey, I want to have a meetup. Anybody in the area? Just engage with people. Remember that it's not all about the numbers. It's about the one-on-one. Those intimate relationships, one-on-one, when you can connect with somebody, that's how you engage with your audience. Down the road, I certainly don't suggest this right out of the bat, but down the road, when you have a little bit of an audience, then why not give a live show a shot? A live show, hook up Ustream, hook up a chat room. I would not suggest the Ustream chat room, by the way, but hook up a chat room, kind of like over at gspn.tv/live. And, engage with your audience there. I've got 20 people in the chat room right now, 31 people watching on the live stream, and they're communicating with each other. And I actually, throughout the episode, I'll kind of take a look at the chat room. Sometimes I just focus on the content. It depends. But the thing is the engagement isn't only with me, with my audience. It's allowing my audience or my community to engage in relationships with each other. Andy's in the chat room, and he says live shows are fun. And then Dr. Anonymous says, which his name is Michael, he says live shows are the best. Which, by the way, I could tell you I could tell you Dr. Anonymous. I can tell you his first and last name. I can tell you what his profession is. I could tell you about where his blog is. I can tell you how long he's been on Blog Talk Radio. I can tell you about the 2 times that I've met him face to face. You engage with your audience. Dave Dufour in here. Shelly Clifford, which, by the way, I don't know if I was ever supposed to say her last name. I apologize if I'm not. But anyway, Shelly's here, and she goes by Jerica, and it took me a long time to understand that her name is not Jerica, but her name is Shelly. And it's something that you determine over time as you engage and get to know your audience. So anyway, I'm not Clifford. Okay, so it's a different Shelly then. I apologize. So I obviously don't know all of my community, but you get the idea here. I mean, at least I finally did get her first name right. Okay, so it's not Jerica. It is Shelly. But anyway, but I do have a listener named Shelly Clifford. So, but yeah. Anyway, moving right along. I hope that answers your question, Brent. Definitely. And one of the other big things here is this. As a podcaster, go where your audience is. Go where they are. All right, and I did this on Social Media Serenity today. For those of you who have heard Social Media Serenity this week, or will hear Social Media Serenity episode 23, I think it was, this week, I apologize, but I'm going to say the same thing over right here, right now. All right, I have clients who hire me, and when I get to the point in the coaching process of how to grow and build your audience, when I start mentioning Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and social networking, sometimes I get this pushback. It's like, I don't know that I have time for that Twitter thing. I don't know that I really want to engage with people on Facebook. It's like, wait a second. You said you want to build community. You say you want to build a community and engage your audience, right? Well, here's what you do. You have to be willing to go where they are. That's why you don't start a forum right off the bat. You don't start a forum right off the bat. You go where they are. You gotta have some give and take. And so here's what I said in Social Media Serenity. Could you imagine this? Let's just say you have a friend named Joe, and Joe says, "Hey Cliff, can you come over and let's hang out and play Xbox together?" And so I said, "Yeah, Joe, I'm coming right over." And then the next, couple days down the road, Joe says, "Hey Cliff, you want to come over and hang out and do this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, Joe, I'll be right over." And then Joe says, "Hey Cliff, I've got this going on, and I'd love for you to come and take a look at what I'm doing over here." And I'm like, "Yeah, Joe, I'll come over." "Man, Joe, that's great." And then all of a sudden I say, "Hey Joe, why don't you come over? I'm going to have a poker night." "No, I really, to be honest with you, I just don't have time to play poker. I can't come over there. But I'll tell you what, why don't you come over my place, because I was already having a get together, and it's like, wait, okay, I can't do that because I've got my own thing going over here, but I'll come check you out later." And then Joe calls you a couple days later and say, hey Cliff, come over, I'm doing XYZ. And I'm like, "Okay, Joe, I'll come over." Do you see where Joe is he's always asking for my attention? He's also always asking me to invest my time, my efforts, my energy in what he's doing, but he never reciprocates. He never comes to where I am. He never calls and says, "Hey Cliff, what are you doing? Hey Cliff, how are you? Hey Cliff, what's going on in your life? Hey Cliff, what are you passionate about?" That's not a friendship. That's not a relationship. Instead, what you are is an infomercial for yourself and all you do. It's like you're always asking people to come to your website, come to my website, come listen to my podcast, come listen to my content, come listen to what I have to say, come listen to what I have to say. Sometimes you need to be willing to follow a couple of people who have invested a lot of their time. If you've got 50 people who listen to your podcast where you ramble for 30 minutes every week, 50 people giving you 30 minutes of their life every single week, and you're telling me you don't have time to go to Twitter and see what they say for 15 minutes and at least twice a week? That's ridiculous, and you don't have any idea of what it means to build a community around your podcast. Not that I'm passionate about this topic or anything, but seriously, don't have time for Twitter or Facebook? I have a tough one with that one. So anyway, it's all about Joe. And is it all about you? So yeah, you got to engage. Do you have to? Now, Gary Vaynerchuk in his book, he'll tell you have to be willing to work until 2:00 in the morning and get up at 8 and do it at the same time. Now, will you crush it and make millions and have out of this world numbers and stuff like that if you do that? Yeah, I will tell you there is a formula that will work. I mean, it really does. It does work. But do you have to do that? No. Would you most people are totally shocked by the fact that I spend no more than 30 minutes every day, no more than 15, 30 minutes every day on Twitter and Facebook, ever. I never really spend, I maybe spend 15 minutes a month on LinkedIn, but I engage with people there because I have it set up. I have processes set in place to where if somebody posts a comment on a status update that I did on Facebook, I get an email. And I schedule 15 to 30 minutes of every day for me to click on those links, to read what they said, and then respond. But I also have a couple different times throughout the week, not every day, but a couple times during the week, and sometimes on days when it's not even scheduled and I just have some free time, which is fewer and further between, but still I try, even sometimes I just have to make some free time, if you know what I mean. But occasionally I will get in and I will go into my timeline and I will not just read what people wrote to me and commented and responded to me, but I will read what they are saying and I will respond to them. I will be the person who comments on their wall post. I will be the person who sends them an out reply about something they initiated as a status message on Twitter. It is important to engage with people where they are. Meet them halfway. Meet them halfway. So anyway, yeah, I hope that's a helpful answer for you. All right, so Gordon has a question, actually not a question, but more of a comment. So here we go.
Hi, Cliff. This is Gordon Firemark from the Entertainment Law Update podcast. Listen, congratulations on the 1800 show mark you recently reached when you mentioned it on Podcast Answer Man number 135. When you mentioned this big number, it made me think of a topic that you might be interested in talking about. One reason that a lot of folks get stuck and have limited or no output or low productivity is a phenomenon I call perfection paralysis. This is where the fear of not being perfect stops people cold and they don't get any work at all done. When the fact of it is, pretty good is more than enough to satisfy even the harshest critics in most cases. So podcasters and other content creators really need to just crank out the work, even if it isn't perfect. Quantity beats quality in this area every single time. After all, perfection's really not attainable anyway. Only God can create perfection. He did so in creating each of us, so as long as we try hard and do our best, we've got something to really be proud about. So thanks. I look forward to hearing what you have to say about this. Keep up the good work.
Gordon, thank you so much for the awesome feedback. I think you'll be surprised to hear me say that I could not agree and disagree with you more. Okay? Wow. I seriously, I'm thinking through this one. I couldn't agree with you more, but I couldn't disagree with you more. Number one, paralysis by analysis is a major problem. And pretty good is not more than enough. No, I don't think so. I think pretty good is good enough to get you started. Okay? That's where I'm going to disagree with you a little bit there. I don't think pretty good is more than enough. I don't. In fact, I'm going to pause for 1 second. I'm going to get an audio clip up here. All right, I found it, and this is, if you go back to episode 136 of Podcast Answer Man, this is the first few seconds of that file. So listen to this right here. And here it comes right about, don't buffer too long. That figures. I'm buffering. Let me try it one more time. And the pitfalls of a live show right here. So let me go ahead and just click on it, and it should pull right up.
I think I had listened to them early on when they didn't have their sound quality, and I had dismissed them because I'm really picky about my sound.
I love to hear that.
I won't listen
Did you hear that, folks?
I won't listen to a podcast that has bad audio, even if it's very interesting.
Podcast. All right, there you go. I won't listen to bad audio. I won't listen to a podcast with bad audio, even if the topic is interesting, even if the content is something I'm looking for. So I'm gonna have to disagree that pretty good is more than enough. I think pretty good is more than enough to get you started. I think pretty good is going to get you out of the gate, with the understanding that pretty good is something you're always going to want to improve on. Now, do I have the perfect podcast here? Have I had the perfect podcast today? Absolutely not. No, absolutely not. Do I hope to improve, to make Podcast Answer Man better in episode number 142 than I am right here in 141? Absolutely. You go back and listen to episode number 1 of Podcast Answer Man and tell me if I haven't improved. In fact, I'll tell you what, let me go ahead and just turn back the sands of time here and let me play this for you and have a listen for just a second. Right about now.
Hey, this is Eric Fisher, and this episode is made possible in part by me and other listeners like me. I have a tight budget, but I choose to make a $3 donation
each month
to make sure that
was
these
back in the
great
day.
shows continue. Making a donation is easy. Just go to generallyspeakingpodcast.com and click on
By the way, I
PayPal
started
donate
Podcast
button.
Answer Man
I
when
don't
this
even
was a
have to
hobby.
have a PayPal account to do it. And now, enjoy the show.
Let's see what this sounded like. Talk shoe.
Talk shoes. Recorded live. This is an interactive podcast designed for audience participation. Come talk, text chat, or listen live at TalkShoe.com.
All right, goodness. Today network has now served more than 500,000 downloads. So you're asking yourself, okay, Cliff's got another podcast. What's this one about? Well, I think the title of the show, Podcast Answer Man, all right, well, actually, you know what? That one didn't sound as bad, other than the fact that, man, did I put a lot of stuff in the front of that show that I shouldn't have. I'll tell you what, here you go. Listen to this one. This is Generally Speaking, a podcast production of Cliff Ravenscraft and Friends. Come on now. Hello and welcome to the show. This is my very first podcast for Generally Speaking. My name is Cliff Ravenscraft. I'm in Hebron, Kentucky, and I just want to go over with you a couple things to get this thing started. First off, I want to talk to you about the format of the show. I could not decide whether or not I wanted to do another Lost podcast that is 100% all Lost. All right, so there you go. That was back in 2005, my friends. But yeah, the thing is, and they're saying that, man, that barely sounds like you. Yeah, that's because I've done a lot to try to improve everything that I do. Here's the thing. Gordon is absolutely right. Don't try to get the perfect podcast every single time. Let me give you an example of somebody who has done what I believe is pretty good, is good enough to get you started. Here, I'm going to throw it out here for you right now. Go to lifebeyondtheassemblyline.com. Go there now and listen to episode number 1 of Life Beyond the Assembly Line. That is a perfect example of pretty good is good enough to get you there, to get you started. Because don't let paralysis by analysis and perfection try to don't get that perfect podcast out there. Then listen to episode number 2. I haven't even listened to episode number 2. I just realized he's got it out there. Wow. That's exciting that he's already got episode number 2 on there. But go to Life Beyond the Assembly Line. I would imagine that there's a jump in quality from episode 1 to episode 2. And don't go back and delete the old stuff. Leave it in there. Let people hear what you sounded like back then and hear the improvement. Does that help? Anyway, There are two more things that I wanted to include in today's show. Dr. Thomas Lamar has the most amazing what is a podcast discussion on his website. And Steve McQueen has a review of some Android podcasting applications. I'm going to put those off till next week. And I do apologize to you who listened at the front of the show, and boy, those were the two things that you stayed listening for. I do apologize, but I'm running out of time, and I do want to get to my infomercial if you don't mind. I've made a determined effort to leave my self-promotion at the end of the show here, but I don't want you to tune out. Listen to this. This is what's going on, and I'm very excited about it. Obviously, why would I do it if I'm not excited and passionate about it, right? But I want to let you know about the Podcast Answer Man Boot Camp webinar series. I'm getting ready to launch this on Saturday, January 9th. It's going to be 7 webinars. When I think they're all within 6 weeks of each other. I think they might even be within 5 weeks of each other. But it's going to be 7 webinars. They're going to be either going to be on Saturday at 12 noon Eastern Time, or they will be on Tuesday evenings at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. When I chose the times for these, I consistently thought of, the majority of my audience is in the U.S., although I know that there's many of you all around the world in multiple different time zones. But I thought what would be the best for the highest percentage of people, East Coast and those of you on the West Coast who are 3 hours behind. I tried to make sure that you were either out of bed or hopefully home from work if that's what you've got going on there. So here's the thing. They're either on Saturdays at 12 noon Eastern Time, which would be 9 o'clock in the morning on Saturday mornings for you on the West Coast. Tuesday evening, 5:30 p.m. or 5:30. Hopefully, you've had some time to get home from work on Tuesday evenings. You can attend these a la carte, meaning one at a time. You can just pick and choose, or you can sign up for the entire boot camp. I'll tell you a little bit about that. I want to tell you that each of the webinars will last for 2 hours. The format should be 90 minutes of pure content and then 30 minutes of Q&A afterwards. Each webinar currently is set to be limited to 15 people. And that's a limitation that I have on this certain GoToMeeting account that I have for doing my webinars. I could, if all of a sudden, if it sells out within the first day of me putting it out on the mailing list, which, by the way, if you're not on the mailing list, podcastanswerman.com/mailing list will get you on there. And if you want more details and you got it after I sent this all out on the mailing list, then just email me and I'll give you all the details. But it's all here on the podcast as well. So here's the situation. Webinar limited to 15 people, each one 2 hours long. This is the big thing here. The webinar is only $100 per webinar. It's a 2-hour session. That's 1/3 of my cost for consulting. So I charge $150 an hour, and so you're going to get 2 hours, and you're going to get that for only $100. You're also going to have the benefit of 14 other people's questions and answers. And for those of you who might be interested in the boot camp of taking the entire seven webinars at a discounted rate of 15% off, you can do all 7 webinars for $595. Okay, so you're getting 7 hours for $595, or actually 14 hours of consulting, really, training that I do in this. Now, I want to let you know, I will be doing these webinars again in the future. It's guaranteed. I will be doing them in the future. They will not be $100 per webinar in the future. They will be significantly more expensive in the future. I'm doing them at a lower cost right out of the gate because it's going to be the first one for each one of the ones that I'm doing here. I've done webinars in the past, and I know that when I do it the second and the third time, it always improves in the quality of me sharing and the consistency of the kind of content that I'm sharing. I know what I'm doing. For those of you who get in early, you can get in. It's a huge bargain. Now, here's the thing. Like I said, this is the infomercial, but let me tell you what these webinars are. And this one, I think this one right here is going to sell out the quickest. And I know this based upon what I know from people what they want to hire me to tell them how to do. Saturday, January 9th at 12 noon, starting at 12 noon, behind the scenes look at how I do GSPN.TV Plus membership. I'm going to show you how I created the system in which every single person who is a GSPN.TV Plus member has their own unique RSS feed that is username and password protected, that cannot be shared with other people. I'm going to show you, my thought process in how, what I wanted to accomplish, why I chose not to go to a service that, has this already put together and takes a portion of your income as a result of, doing everything for you. How I bill people, how I set up subscriptions, the software I use to manage all the usernames and passwords. I will tell you, I built this all from scratch, and it was not easy to do. And I'm not sure that it's extremely easy to duplicate, but at the very least, you'll see exactly step by step the process of what it looks like from beginning to end in that session. So how I do GSPN.TV Plus membership, where Plus members have access to everything, and all the other content is only available. There's only certain episodes of certain shows available. I'm going to go through all of that. That is Saturday, January 9th. Tuesday, January 19th at 8:30 p.m. We're going to do Adobe Audition, why I use it and how I use it. So it's going to be like the basics of, Adobe Audition, $349 piece of software. Why is it that I chose to use this software, and how do I do it, and why, how did it take my, podcast post-production from, 55 minutes down to 5 minutes. And I'm going to show you how and why I use it. And then basically the next one is going to be Tuesday, January 26th. It's going to be Audacity 101. And so Audacity 101 is going to be just the basics of Audacity, how to install Audacity, how you can use Audacity to fix things such as, increasing levels, lowering levels, how to put in audio music bumpers in the front and in the back. It's just going to be very basic, but I'm going to train you how to get great sound from your podcast without using the lame encoder and all the other different things. So if I was using Audacity, this is how I would use it. That's what that webinar is going to be. Saturday, January 23rd at 12 noon, we're going to do WordPress for podcasting. This is another major one. The fact that I'm doing it for $100, this one, I'm going to actually take a volunteer of somebody who wants to create a podcast, okay, who does not have a domain, who does not have a hosting account, and who does not have a WordPress installation. And what I will do during that the first 90 minutes of that session, we will use Bluehost. We will create a Bluehost account. We will register their domain. We will install WordPress. I will install a default theme that I use for all my clients in WordPress. I will configure it with the plugins that I use for podcasting. I will change the colors to make it match exactly the way that I want it to be. I will set up the feeds for FeedBurner. I will take the feed from FeedBurner. I will submit it to iTunes, and we will have a sample episode posted and ready to be downloaded by the end of that session. I can do that within the 2-hour session. And I'm going to you're going to see me do it step by step how I do that. So again, that's a major one, folks. Saturday, January 30th at 12 noon, how I use social media to build my brand and build community. Now, I've already talked a lot about that here. So it's going to be some of the same, but it's going to be a lot more about how I carry those things out, and it's going to have a lot more question and answers. So you definitely would get a lot of value out of being able to interact in that conversation. Saturday, February 6th, GarageBand for Podcasting 101. For those of you who are Mac users and want to learn how to podcast, I'm going to show you if all I had available to me was a Mac and I had to podcast on a Mac, how would I record and produce a podcast and put intro and outro music, and what audio effects would I use out of the compressor tools that are built in? What would the workflow look like for me if I were using GarageBand? That's that session. And then the very last one in the series is Saturday, February 13th. And by the way, before I tell you this last one, let me just go ahead and fire up the music here. The very last one, Saturday, February 13th, is my 100-point podcast inspection. That's right, the 100-point podcast inspection. I mentioned this several episodes back. By the way, I've done a lot of these podcast inspections, and it's been a huge amount of fun each time to really help podcasters take their podcast to the next level. And what the 100-point podcast inspection is where I take an episode of somebody's podcast, I listen to it, and then I take a look at their iTunes listing. I take a look at their website. I take a look at the formatting of everything. I look and ask 100 questions and ask myself 100 questions about that podcast. And then what I do with the client is after I've done that, I then come and say, here are the things that I think we should address, or you should address, or things that I think you should consider. And what you're going to get in this webinar, if you take the 100-point inspection, I'm not going to actually do an inspection. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go through and show you and tell you what are the 100 things I'm looking at. All right? What are the 100 things I'm looking at? And I'll kind of explain to you what the importance of all those different things are. So anyway, like I said, it's a Podcast Answer Man boot camp webinar series, seven podcasting webinars, and they're all going to be 2 hours in length. Individually $100. You can do all 7 of them for $5.95. And if you want to be one of the 15 people that get in, then you want to contact me as quick as possible. And for those of you who are here live, watching the live show, you have the first access to this stuff. I haven't even set it up as I'm recording this. I haven't set up the registration forms yet, but I'm going to be doing that before the end of this weekend. And for those of you who are on the mailing list, you will be the next people to have access to register for these webinars. And again, get on that mailing list, podcastanswerman.com/mailing list. That's my infomercial. I saved it for the end, so hopefully if you didn't want to hear all that, you had turned me off before then. May God richly bless you. I pray that every single one of you guys out there, and girls, that you will all have a very blessed and an extremely prosperous 2010. God bless you all. I look forward to talking to you then. Bye-bye.